The red dot, tap subscribe, because if this story disappears, you'll know exactly who turned the camera off. The first sound in the dark wasn't boots or doors. It was the old, patient click of a lens taking aim. I held my breath and counted. 1 click. 2. A third, closer, like curiosity learning how to walk. Then the power returned in a slow, stuttering wave. Screens in the control room relit in mismatched pairs. The warden stood with his hands behind his back, face soft with the kind of calm that practices itself. On the bottom row, the archive feed stayed black, a square of withheld permission. "You hear that?" he asked. "The camera," I said. He shook his head. "Not a camera. The camera. What the men here called the archivist before the name moved to a person. Tools inherit beliefs when you feed them enough memory." He was making mythology sound practical, which is how people sell cages to themselves. "Where is Sokolov?" I asked again. The warden's eyes slid to a monitor labeled processing. A white room. A table. Empty restraints crossed like folded arms. He did not look away from the emptiness long enough to lie. "Somewhere safe," he said. I stepped closer to the screens. The feed from Romanov's corridor caught my eye, the slow, quiet river of a day reduced to repetitions. He paced, the measured walk of a man keeping agreements with himself. Then he paused at his bunk and, with the same grace he'd shown with the supper tray, slid his hand beneath the mattress and removed the folded note I wasn't supposed to have seen. He didn't open it. He just held it, eyes unfocused, as if reading something through skin. On the console, a thin red light pulsed. The warden noticed, frowned, and tapped a switch. Every monitor blinked once. When the image returned, the note was gone. Romanov's fingers were empty in the future the camera preferred. He had edited the world with a button. "You asked me yesterday about the cost of control," the warden murmured. "This is the discount version. The full price is paid by those who never watch themselves change." Something in me tilted. "Why keep a blind spot then?" I asked, nodding toward the stairwell camera that framed the red dot in the landing like an ornament. "That dot," he said, "reminds us we can fail. Humility is good policy." "No," I said. "It's bait." For a heartbeat, his eyes confessed more than his mouth ever would. He reached for a key. Behind us, the intercom breathed. The voice that came through was dry, careful, and almost kind. "Do not step on the red dot." It was the archivist's voice, and it no longer sounded like it was traveling through a tunnel. It sounded like it was in the room with us, standing slightly behind my left shoulder. The warden pressed his lips together. "He's sentimental," he said. "He wants the story to end the way it started." "What happens if I step on it?" I asked. "Nothing," the warden said, too quickly. I looked at the processing screen. It had changed, the table was no longer empty. Sokolov sat on the edge of it, wrists free, posture attentive, like a student in the first row deciding whether to raise his hand. A guard stood in the doorway, not entering, as if the threshold itself was a policy. "Where does the dot lead?" I asked. "Nowhere." The warden's voice flattened. "It's ceremonial." The intercom clicked again. "Every ritual solves a problem it created," the archivist said. "Walk carefully." I moved for the door. "Stop," the warden said, and there was a new shape in the word fear or anger, hard to tell in fluorescent light. I didn't stop. The hallway beyond control was a spool of echoes. At each bend, a camera dome watched me approach like a pupil dilating around a thought it did not want to have. At the stairwell, the dot waited, glossy, precise, absurd in its smallness. You don't expect a war to mark its battles with paint. At the landing rail, someone stood. The young guard. The one who had tipped the note, who had handed me a breadcrumb with his eyes. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Neither should you," I said. He nodded, almost relieved that we agreed on something. He held out a cassette. Unlabeled. Faded. My hands knew its weight before my mind did. 412C, he said. The last entry before they tried to make him forget he existed. Why help me? I asked. Because he remembered me even when the cameras didn't. He swallowed. Because he made me real. Footsteps. Closer. The warden's. The guard's eyes moved to the dot, then to my shoes. Is it a trap? I asked. Everything here is, he said. But some traps catch the hunter. The warden's hand landed on my shoulder, polite the way storms can be polite from far away. You are trespassing, he told the guard without looking at him. The guard didn't move. His jaw pulsed once, that precise metronome I'd noticed before. Sir, with respect, she's already inside. You can't escort someone out of their own footage. We stood like that, 3 bodies and 1 red circle. Somewhere, a relay clicked. Somewhere, a man catalogued breaths. I stepped onto the dot. The world didn't end. It narrowed. The camera above the landing coughed an electrical hiccup and every monitor in the control room, visible through the half-open door down the corridor, stuttered. My vision tunneled, sound did, too. It wasn't dark. It was honest. For the first time since I'd entered Black Dolphin, I felt unfilmed. The warden's fingers tightened. Off, he said softly. Now. He was not angry. He was afraid. Why? I asked. The question was simple, a child's. The answer wasn't. Because the only power I have is over what exists, he said. And for a moment, neither of you do. He nodded at the young guard first, then at me, 2 people his system could not place. In a prison built to define everything, we were undefined. A door down the hall banged open. The processing room. Sokolov stepped into the corridor, unescorted. He saw us, saw the dot, and slowed like a man approaching an animal that might be hungry. Listen to me, the warden said, the plea hidden under a command. You don't know what that dot belongs to. The intercom clicked again, soft as a breath on the back of the neck. It belongs to the ones who choose, the archivist said. And to the ones who pay for choosing. Sokolov stopped opposite us, separated by the rail and a staircase of air. He looked at my shoes on the dot, then at the warden's hand on my shoulder, then at the guard holding the unlabeled tape like a secret trying to become a fact. What do you want? Sokolov asked, and I did not know if he meant me or the prison or the voice in the wires. Proof, I said. Of? That I'm not only being filmed, I said. That I'm watching back. He nodded once. Then don't move. He put 1 foot on the neighboring tread, placed his fingers on the rail, and deliberately, like someone writing a sentence they intend to remember, stepped across to the landing, into the circle with me. The camera above us died. Not a flicker. Not a glitch. It went still. On the control room wall, that square turned to a gray that had never been designed. The warden made a sound no one would ever file. The young guard didn't cheer or gasp. He did something smaller and braver. He opened his palm and tore the cassette label in half, an unlabeled label becoming 2 unlabeled labels, a royalty-free act of disobedience. Now what? He asked. Now we leave, Sokolov said. He took my elbow, gentle. We walked not fast, not slow, the speed of a thought you're willing to keep. No alarm sounded. No gate descended. It turns out most prisons don't stop you with metal, they stop you with stories you believe too well. At the first corner, the warden called after us. If you walk out with that tape, he said, voice cracked enough to admit it belonged to a man, not an office, they will erase the next 3 months of the men in D-Wing to cover the hole. That is the cost. Choose who pays. The hallway's air thinned. The young guard looked at Sokolov. Sokolov looked at me. The tape in my coat pocket pressed against my ribs like a second heartbeat. The intercom was quiet. When it spoke again, I understood why he had been called the archivist and not the editor. "Truth is a ration," he said. "But rations can be shared." Sokolov nodded like he had been waiting to hear that sentence for longer than a career. He stepped off the dot, back into the recorded world, and waved at the camera deliberately, an old-fashioned greeting to an old-fashioned witness. "Watch this," he said to it. And then louder, to the control room where the warden would be standing very still, opened the external visitor gate. Number 3. On your authority. A beat. A second. A third. The gate at the far end of the hall clicked. I frowned. He just listened. "He won't again," Sokolov said. "But once is enough." We walked the long corridor toward the gate. On the monitors, we existed. Then, at every third camera, we didn't. The failure propagated itself like a rumor learning how to be a law. The young guard peeled off toward the workshop wing, already choosing his next plan out loud so the microphones would hear what they needed to: inspection latrine's inventory. He would be where he had to be when someone asked. At the final door, I turned to Sokolov. "Romanov's note," I said. "What did it say?" He smiled in that small, durable way people do when they remember that they have names. It said, "Misha is waiting. Take the medicine." The nurse's invention had become a bridge, a lie that escorted a man to the truth his body needed. Not all edits were betrayals. Some were instructions for survival. At the threshold, Sokolov put a hand on the frame and looked back down the bright, square throat of Black Dolphin. "You will publish?" he asked. "I will show what I can," I said. "And say what the cameras couldn't." He nodded. "Then do one thing for me. Name it. Don't make me a hero. Make me a person who chose a door and a timing." "I can do that." He held my gaze. "And if you can't, don't tell the story." I didn't promise. I didn't have to. We both knew the bargain: stories keep people alive until they don't, and then they do something stranger, they keep them from disappearing. Outside, the Volga wind found us. It smelled like snow and electrical fire, like a city refusing to forget. I held the cassette, the unlabeled label, the small square that had made so many larger ones rearrange themselves, and felt the ghost of the archivist standing on my left again. "What are you?" I asked the air, risking the foolishness of a reporter talking to a voice. The answer came without wires. "A consequence," he said. "And a warning." Behind us, the prison's light strobed once in a coordinated blink, a final signal from an institution that had learned to wink. The gate slid shut and I was on the wrong side of it, only in the way all storytellers are on the wrong side of their subjects. I drove until the walls were an idea behind me and the city became a map of windows. In my hotel room, I set the tape deck on the table and placed the cassette beside it. I didn't press play. Instead, I wrote. I wrote about a red dot that was not superstition but policy. About a warden who told the truth out loud and another truth with his thumb. About a guard who learned how to pass a note without moving his hands. About a man named Romanov who paced his cell and waited for a friend who didn't exist and therefore mattered more than most. And about an archivist who had once been a person, then a function, then a rumor in the wiring, and who had finally become what all cameras secretly want to be: a memory that chooses. When I finished, the room felt full of witnesses, of edits, of the quiet that follows a choice. I looked at the tape one last time. I understood what it held: not an ending, not proof, but an invitation to see how things had been arranged. I slid it back into my pocket. The next evening, I sent the story. I didn't send the tape. It didn't belong to me. In the morning, a message waited on my phone from a number I didn't recognize. No words. Only a photo, grainy and stubborn: Sokolov in a place that looked like the edge of a river, his face unremarkable, alive in the best way. Beneath it, a single line, the kind of caption that cameras don't write and people do: "Do not step on the red dot." I laughed, then I cried, then I did the one thing the prison taught me that it didn't mean to teach, I turned my own camera off. This is the last frame you need to see. The rest belongs to those still inside, who are filming now with the light they carry in.